Hyrum L. Andrus, August 15th to 19th, 1991. Lecture 4, The Idea of Zion. I just want to say again how much I appreciate being here with you folks and feeling the spirit, and particularly having Helen May with me. We've had an enjoyable trip down. She has a whole big batch of files on President Benson, and she brought them with us, and we read Ezra Taft Benson from Alpine to Snowflake. It was just a thrilling experience to read through discourse after discourse that he has given. As I'd drive along, she'd read and we'd discuss and say, "Hey, that's a great idea. Where can we work that one in?" It's a thrill and a pleasure to be with you. Our subject for the hour is the idea of Zion. As you read some of the early sections of the Doctrine and Covenants, sections 11, 12, 14, and it's easy to remember because they're all verse 6 in those 3 revelations, and they all say the same thing. The thing that they say, as in section 11, verse 6, is, "Now as you have asked, behold, I say unto you, keep my commandments and seek to bring forth and establish the cause of Zion." The prophet Joseph Smith makes this statement as he talks about the importance of Zion. This is Teachings, page 160. We ought to have the building up of Zion as our greatest object. As our greatest object. Some people say that teaching the gospel is the greatest work, and other people say that the redemption of the dead is the greatest work, and there are ways in which that comment needs to be understood to make it more meaningful. But the building of Zion will include both of them, won't it? So if there's an end to controversy, it will be on this. We need to build Zion, not just as something that's going to happen in the last days. We need to build Zion for our salvation. Let me put it this way. No person will enter into the celestial kingdom as an heir to be exalted therein who has not established in his life the principles, the knowledge, the doctrine, and the program of Zion. You become exalted by becoming a Zion people, and to the degree that we are Zion people, we are prepared for celestial existence. The building of Zion is not just something for the millennium. It's something that I need to do if I ever expect to be exalted in the celestial kingdom, because exaltation is not based on any other principle. You cannot neglect the building of Zion and be exalted. It just cannot be done. And you cannot neglect understanding the principles and the doctrine of Zion and be exalted. It simply cannot be done. You can be baptized and get into the celestial kingdom and be a ministering angel and run around loose in eternity as a freelance celestial being, as it were, sealed, however, to some family, but you cannot be exalted unless you have learned and internalized the principles of Zion. Here in section 105, as the Lord speaks to the saints in June of 1834 at a place called Fishing River in Missouri, the setting is Zion's camp, which had traveled this 1,000 miles thereabouts from Kirtland to Missouri to give the saints support in being reinstated upon their lands. When they got there, the Lord gave this revelation. Verse 2, "Behold, I say unto you, were it not for the transgressions of my people, speaking concerning the church and not individuals, they might have been redeemed even now. But behold, they have not learned to be obedient to the things which I required at their hands, but are full of all manner of evil, and do not impart of their substance, as becometh saints, to the poor and afflicted among them, and are not united according to the union required by the law of the celestial kingdom." That union is union based on spirit, testimony, the revelations of God's will and mind to each person, which brings a natural union. He says, quote, "And Zion cannot be built up unless it is by the principles of the law of the celestial kingdom. Otherwise I cannot receive her unto myself." End quote. That last phrase is very, very important. It has more than one application. It means for the here and now, for this earth, that Christ will not come in the second coming until he has a people established on the principles of the law of the celestial kingdom. You can talk about the second coming, you can speculate when it's going to take place, but you write this down that he will not come in his glory and in his power until there is a body of people living the full law of the doctrine and covenants concerning Zion. It simply will not be, because he cannot come and receive them unto himself. Then the extension goes on into the resurrection. He cannot receive us as his people and we be his people in the resurrection, except it is on the basis that we have received, embraced, applied, internalized the principles of the law of the celestial kingdom. So this is very important. In the inspired revision of the Bible, in the book of Genesis, there is an interesting statement there that has its basis in a covenant which the Lord made initially with Enoch and then renewed with Noah. This applies in its fulfillment to us in the latter day, or to that body of people who will finally build Zion in preparation for Christ's millennial reign. In verse 17 of Genesis 9, I will establish my covenant with you, which I made unto Enoch, speaking to Enoch, concerning the remnants of your posterity. And God made a covenant with Noah, and said, This shall be the token of the covenant I make between me and you, and for every living creature with you, for perpetual generations. I will set my bow, that is the rainbow, in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which I have made between me and you, for every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh, and the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant which I made unto thy father Enoch. And here's the gist of the covenant. That when men should keep all my commandments, Zion should again come on the earth, the city of Enoch, which I have caught up unto myself. And this is mine everlasting covenant, speaking to Noah, that when thy posterity shall embrace the truth and look upward, then shall Zion look downward, and all the heavens shall shake with gladness, and the earth shall tremble with joy, and the general assembly of the church of the firstborn, those members of the church that are mainly up there, shall come down out of heaven and possess the earth, and shall have place until the end come. And this is the everlasting covenant which I made with thy father Enoch. Note the symbolism there, the symbolism of the rainbow, which acts in symbol as the veil between us here and those up there. And when we, under the great canopy of the rainbow, embrace the gospel and quit looking at mundane things, earthly things, and look upward instead with the Spirit of the Lord in our lives and receive all the truths and apply all the principles of the gospel, when we do this, then Zion up there will look down, and the general assembly of the church of the firstborn, the church above the veil, will then come down out of heaven and have place on earth. What does that imply must needs be done before the second coming? We've got to build Zion. We've got to. Zion is to be established before the millennium, and if I can say so and venture to say so, years before the millennium, decades before the millennium. Zion must be established before the millennium and will exist for a period of time. For example, here in section 45, verse 66, the Lord is talking about the last days. And you just take this statement and analyze it at face value for what it is saying. And it shall be called the New Jerusalem, a land of peace, a city of refuge, a place of safety for the saints of the Most High God. And the glory of the Lord shall be there. That is the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. And the terror of the Lord also shall be there, insomuch that the wicked will not come unto it, and it shall be called Zion. And it shall come to pass among the wicked that every man that will not take his sword against his neighbor must needs flee unto Zion for safety. And there shall be gathered unto it out of every nation under heaven, and it shall be the only people that shall not be at war one with another. And it shall be said among the wicked, Let us not go up to battle against Zion, for the inhabitants of Zion are terrible, wherefore we cannot stand. Now, ask yourselves this question. Is that talking about the millennium? Obviously not. There are wicked people. There is the situation where either you take up your sword against your neighbor or else you flee to Zion. Is it talking about the period after the millennium? Obviously not. What period is it talking about? A period before the millennium, and this is an extended period of time as we understand the prophetic picture. In this time, then, Zion will arise with great power. Here in section 64, the Lord speaks of Zion in this period of time. He says, verse 41, "For behold, I say unto you, that Zion shall flourish, and the glory of the Lord shall be upon her, and she shall be an ensign." What is an ensign? It's something to which you look. Anciently, in the time of battle, they carried an ensign. The ensign showed the troops where to focus attention, where they were moving. An ensign is something to which you look for direction. "And it shall be an ensign unto the people, and there shall come unto her out of every nation under heaven. And the day shall come when the nations of the earth shall tremble because of her, and shall fear because of her terrible ones." Before the millennium? Obviously so. So the program is that we need to build Zion, and that means that we need to kind of get an idea of what Zion is all about. We have statements in the scriptures that help us on the subject. Section 97 tells us concerning Zion, and it has some other things that we'll come back to later in relation to Zion. But in the midst of the explanation, he says this in verse 22, "Therefore, verily thus saith the Lord, let Zion rejoice, for this is Zion, the pure in heart. Therefore let Zion rejoice, while all the wicked shall mourn." So one of the most distinctive qualities of Zion is a people who are pure in heart. And that purity has to come through the gospel, through the sanctifying power of the gospel. Another statement that helps us understand the idea of Zion is what the Lord said here in the book of Moses about the order that Enoch built up. Enoch and his people established a Zion society in their midst, and note what the Lord says about them. This is Moses 7, verses 16 to 21. "And from that time forth there were wars and bloodshed among them, but the Lord came and dwelt with his people." Now the Savior, as a pre-earth spirit, came and dwelt with Zion, and likewise the Savior will come to the latter-day Zion, and he will dwell with the latter-day saints for years and for decades before he comes to the world in glory. As latter-day saints, we talk about preparing for the second coming. Personally, I'm not thinking about his coming to the world in glory. That's looking beyond the mark. The thing I'm thinking about is when Isaiah 59 is fulfilled, that the Redeemer shall come to Zion and to those who turn from ungodliness in Jacob. This is much closer. This is much, much closer as a period of time. I don't venture to prophesy, but we're living at a time that is very, very near when many people will personally and individually see and receive instructions from Christ our Redeemer. As I've said, he will be in Zion for years prior to his coming in glory. We'll get to that when we talk about the prophetic picture this evening and tomorrow evening and Saturday evening. It goes on here in the book of Moses and says, "The fear of the Lord was upon all nations, so great was the glory of the Lord, which was upon his people." See, they had the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. They had the endowment of glory, which naturally belongs to the people of the saints. If we don't have it, we're not saints. We're ain'ts and complaints. We're not saints. If we're really saints, we'll have the endowment of glory. I've looked over the top of my house several times, and I haven't seen it, and I haven't seen it over anyone else's either. I've had some beautiful spiritual experiences, and so have all of us, but we're not there yet. So the glory of the Lord was upon the people, and this was so concentrated that there was fear upon all the nations because of that divine endowment. He says, "And the Lord blessed the land, and they were blessed upon the mountains and upon the high places, and did flourish. And the Lord called his people Zion." And here's why. Because they were of one heart and of one mind. That doesn't contradict the Lord's statement in section 97 that Zion is the pure in heart. You can't have one heart and one mind except on the basis of purity, and the two go together. They were Zion because they were of one heart and one mind, and dwelt in righteousness, and there was no poor among them, which meant that they had the economic program of the kingdom, and they applied it, and they were sanctified. They had the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night over every dwelling place. And inside the house they had Pentecost and the gifts of the Spirit, and the blessings and the endowments of the Spirit. Those are the things that we should be looking for as a people and working toward. Some of us think that we can handle the endowment of glory. Let me tell you, you can't handle it without a preparatory action. You can't handle it. It just simply cannot be done unless there is a preparation for it. That preparation is accomplished through service and through devotion and the study of the scriptures and through fasting and through prayer and through personal discipline and through the meekness of Christ in our lives. It simply cannot be handled because the endowment is such and is so dynamic and so forceful and powerful, and with it goes the responsibility of the greater endowment that opens up the onslaught of the adversary against the individual commensurate with what he has received. So we have to work and prepare for the endowment of Zion with glory. The Lord goes on and says, Enoch continued his preaching in righteousness unto the people of God. And it came to pass in his days that he built a city that was called the city of holiness, even Zion. Now this means to me that Zion has both a spiritual and what may be called a natural or temporal basis. It has the law of consecration and stewardship as a basis. But above all, it has the foundation of spiritual renewal. People who have been born again, people who have been changed and transformed spiritually, people who have awakened unto God and who enjoy the spirit of revelation and the gifts of the Spirit. It is right at this point where the rubber meets the road that President Benson is talking to us today, and it's for this reason that so many of us are under condemnation. We're saying, all is well in Zion. Look at the number of temples we've built in the last 5 years. Look at the number of missionaries we've got out. And essentially, we are aping the ways of the Gentiles economically and socially, and we've translated achievement in that realm and made it a substitute for getting the gifts of the Spirit and living by the Spirit and getting the revelations of the Spirit and getting the love of God in our hearts. We've done that to the extent that we've turned to secularism and materialism, and there is lethargy in our midst. We don't want to listen too much to the gospel because it just isn't of interest, and it is, after all, hard to understand. And yet here we are with the challenge of building Zion. Let me give you this definition of Zion. Zion is a body of saints established on the full program and covenants of the gospel so that they are partakers of the truth and power of God and made pure in heart, united in one mind and heart, sealed to eternal life and lives by the holy priesthood and endowed with God's glory as a cloud and smoke by day and a pillar of fire by night. The day will come when, as Latter-day Saints, some of us at least will come to this standard. In the Book of Mormon, Nephi puts 19 chapters, or there were at least 19 chapters from Isaiah. Many of them are put there by Nephi, and then the Savior puts one there, and then Abinadi puts a full chapter there. But a couple of these chapters of Isaiah are chapters 3 and 4. They both deal with Latter-day Saints and the cleansing that's going to come to the saints. In that day of cleansing, and I'm reading from 2 Nephi 14, verse 2, in that day shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious. This is that group that will finally be refined out from among the Latter-day Saints. And when you get to the other end of the tunnel, after severe and critical cleansings and judgments, as Isaiah said, Zion shall be redeemed with judgment and her converts with righteousness. Then that group that comes out the other end of the tunnel will indeed be a Zion people. They may be sitting out there somewhere in the desert, but they'll have the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. They'll have Pentecost in their midst. And in that day, Isaiah says, talking of them, shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious, the fruit of the earth excellent and comely to them that are escaped of Israel. And he says, verse 5, the Lord will create upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion and upon her assemblies a cloud and smoke by day and the shining of a flaming fire by night. For upon all the glory of Zion shall be a defense. Instead of having Star Wars as a method of defense, we'll have the endowment of glory. And it will be a defense to the saints, and it will be a lot less costly than the present program, if I may add that. Zion, then, isn't really Zion until we come to this point. Nephi tells us that this point is going to be achieved through opposition. In 1 Nephi 14, he sees this great era of warfare against Zion, which I think we discussed with you when I was here before. This becomes an important key because it's out of this setting that Zion finally arises and becomes the standard and ensign that she is supposed to be. Note that Nephi sees the multitudes among all nations that are gathered together to fight against Zion. That will include the American nation against the saints, and it will be something more than the media. It will be military, and it will be lawlessness and a devastating kind of thing where the Lord will have to step in and preserve his people. But he says, "And it came to pass that I, Nephi, beheld the power of the Lamb of God, that it descended upon the saints of the church of the Lamb and upon the covenant people of the Lord, who were scattered upon all the face of the earth, and they were armed with righteousness and with the power of God in great glory." Now that's where Zion begins to arise and be an ensign under those circumstances. And then Zion becomes what may be called Mount Zion, and the two terms have a distinct meaning. Let me just spend a little time with you now on the term Mount Zion. But let's first of all turn to section 84 to get an introduction to what the Lord has to say about it here in this early revelation as he speaks to the saints clear back in September of 1832. In verse 2, he says, "Yea, the word of the Lord concerning his church established in the last days for the restoration of his people, as he has spoken by the mouth of his prophets, and for the gathering of his saints to stand upon Mount Zion, which shall be the city of New Jerusalem." Then having said that, he explains which city shall be built beginning at the temple lot, which is appointed by the finger of the Lord in the western boundaries of the state of Missouri, and dedicated by the hand of Joseph Smith, Jr., and others with whom the Lord is well pleased. "Verily this is the word of the Lord, that the city of New Jerusalem shall be built by the gathering of the saints, beginning at this place, even the place of the temple, which temple shall be reared in this generation." That's one time when men failed, but the Lord didn't. So in section 124, he cancels out the immediate responsibility. He doesn't cancel out the ultimate fulfillment, but for that day, he set the work aside. He says, "For verily this generation," speaking of the original declaration, "shall not pass away until an house shall be built unto the Lord, and a cloud shall rest upon it, which cloud shall be even the glory of the Lord, which shall fill the house." Then as he comes back to that same theme in verse 31, after talking about the sons of Moses and of Aaron in the priesthood, not their sons in the flesh, sons in the priesthood, he then says, "Therefore, as I said concerning the sons of Moses, for the sons of Moses and also the sons of Aaron shall offer an acceptable offering and sacrifice in the house of the Lord, which house shall be built unto the Lord in this generation upon the consecrated spot as I have appointed. And the sons of Moses and of Aaron shall be filled with the glory of the Lord upon Mount Zion in the Lord's house, whose sons are ye, and also many whom I have called," etc. All right, the Lord's desire is to do what? To build Mount Zion. Mount Zion is to be endowed with glory, the cloud by day, the pillar of fire by night. And the sons of Moses and of Aaron, the sons in the priesthood of Moses and Aaron, are to be endowed with this glory. And had the Lord's program gone forward and the saints been as faithful as they ought to have been, that would have happened in that generation. But we have a more sad story to tell. People who become celestial people are people who are established on Mount Zion. Note what the Lord says in section 76, verse 66, as he speaks of the celestial kingdom. Quote, "These are they who are come unto Mount Zion." Are come. They've arrived. They've been there. Their lives are established on that program, and hence they are celestial. Quote, "These are they who are come unto Mount Zion, and unto the city of the living God, the heavenly place, the holiest of all." In the vision of Christ and his saints on Mount Zion, you have a report of this in section 133, where the Lord refers to a time yet future. This period of time, if I can just make a clarification, pertains to that period immediately before Christ comes to the Jews and immediately before he comes in the clouds of heaven. So there's a great work to be done to develop things before he gets to that point where he comes to the Jews and to the world in the clouds of heaven. He speaks of that in verse 17. For behold, the Lord hath sent forth the angel, crying through the midst of heaven, saying, Prepare ye the way of the Lord, and make his paths straight. For the hour of his coming is nigh, when the Lamb shall stand upon Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written on their foreheads. Wherefore, prepare ye for the coming of the bridegroom. Go ye out to meet him. He is talking about incidents prior to and preparatory developments for the second coming. The reference is back to Revelation 14 in the New Testament. That particular chapter begins with John the Revelator seeing Christ as he stands on Mount Zion just before the second coming, where there is a great division between the people. The righteous, on one hand, gathered to Zion and Mount Zion, established, and Christ and the 144,000 with him. And then, on the other hand, the wicked of the world. As John sees that, he writes as follows, beginning with verse 1. And I looked, and lo, a Lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven, as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps, and they sung as it were a new song. The four beasts, and we'll talk about that Saturday night, before the four beasts and the elders, and no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. These are they which were not defiled with women. It doesn't say that they were bachelors or some kind of celibates. These are they who are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the first fruits unto God and to the Lamb. Let me just make this clarification. All of these good brethren are married men. All of them are. They are men who hold fullness of priesthood, and you can't give a man fullness of priesthood except it is in the marriage relationship. They are called virgins. Why? They are called not defiled with women. Why? That doesn't mean that women are some kind of creatures that you can get defiled with, that they've got some kind of dreaded disease, or they're lepers, or you just don't get into their presence. It just doesn't have that kind of connotation. It's talking about men who are sanctified. It's talking about men who have applied the physical endowments in the right way. Hence, they are undefiled. They are virgins, just like the 10 virgins representing the whole church, men and women. The virgin principle indicates the purity of their character. It doesn't indicate the marriage status there. It indicates the purity of their character. The truth is, as section 76 makes clear, that these are men who hold the keys to bring people into the church of the firstborn, the fullness of the priesthood, and the sealing powers. To get to that level of development, those things are only given by and in and through the sacred covenants of eternal marriage. So all of these brethren are married. It says, quote, These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth, and in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. The 144,000 then have a special relationship with Christ. They follow him whithersoever he shall go. They are the great harvest program of the Latter-day Men, who are endowed with the powers of priesthood to bring people into the church of the firstborn. And all of this will be done, and you finally come to the point where the saints will stand on Mount Zion with Christ and the 144,000 before the second coming. To get to that point, Christ will come to the saints in Zion years before, and there will be a development in relation to the Zion program and the building of that Zion program. Then it will consummate in his standing on Mount Zion with the 144,000 ready to institute the great and final events that bring his millennial reign into power, the cleansing of the earth, the going to the Jews and the cleansing, and the final coming in glory. That's the picture we need to get. We need to see first things first. We need to see where we are. We need to see that we have a living prophet who is saying we need to get sanctified. We are running behind times spiritually. We are not where we ought to be as a church in relation to spiritual renewal and the knowledge of the Book of Mormon. We have a prophet who we thought was just going to talk about politics. Instead, he talks about the most vital and important things, not that politics are unimportant. I have 3 degrees in politics, for whatever that's worth, but at least they are important and have an important role to play. But politics isn't worth a hoot, if I can put it that way, except by a virtuous people and by a people who are sanctified. The founding fathers established this nation with the intent that it could not be sanctified except by a virtuous people. We will prove that statement true if we don't watch it. So Mount Zion will be established. Now, what is Mount Zion? What does it mean? Well, let me just explore the idea. Let's first of all start with the word mount. I'm using it now as a noun, not a verb. Used as a verb. Go mount your horse. That's a verb. Let's use it as a noun. What is a mount? Well, a mount is that upon which something rests, or is established for use of exhibition. It is the card, etc., upon which a drawing or a photograph is mounted. It's the mount, the basic mount. It's a saddle horse used for riding. That's your mount, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They are on their mount. The mount is that on which they sit, or which they rest. So primarily a mount used as a noun is a foundation, a platform, a basis on which something else is established. That's one meaning. Another meaning is that it's an elevation, as in the earth's surface. When used as part of a proper name, it usually precedes a specific application as, for example, Mount Washington, or Mount this, or Mount that. It's an elevated thing. Put the 2 ideas together, the 2 points combined. The mount is the divine order of principles, ordinances, and powers on which Zion rests, by which she is elevated as a true ensign and standard to the world. Mount Zion is established on the sacred principles, rights, covenants, and powers of the temple, and thereby is elevated to be an ensign. Let me put it this way, that Zion is a temple-centered, temple-founded society. Zion becomes Mount Zion when she is established upon the sacred covenants of the house of the Lord, the sacred covenants of obedience, the sacred covenant of sacrifice, the sacred covenant of the law of the gospel, which is the Sermon on the Mount in its pure statement. Living outside ourselves in service to others, the sacred covenant of virtue and chastity, the sacred covenant of consecration by which we are prepared to enter through the veil into God's presence, to be heirs with God and joint heirs with Christ. When we, instead of just getting our hands in the air, really establish our lives on that foundation and then go on to receive the sealing powers and the endowment of glory, that comes through the sealing power, so that there is a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night over every dwelling place, then and then only do we have Mount Zion, or in other words, then only do we have Zion established upon her mount being the order of rights, principles, powers, sealing ordinances, fullness of priesthood, and endowment of the temple. That is the way we need to move. That is why it is so very, very important that we not only enter the covenant to be married, but that we go back time and time again so that we study the mount on which Zion is established. And we become familiar with it, and we internalize it and make it part of our lives. Having been through the sacred ceremony of the holy endowment, then we just sit quietly in the celestial room and we talk about how we can establish our lives on the sacred covenants that we've just made. How can we really do it? And this within the framework that the prophet has established. How can I become a temple saint? How can I really apply those things? The temple is important, and it's not just something that we do for the dead. I used to get the idea when I was a kid and was interested in the circus that the church and the temple were something like a circus. In the circus, you have the big top, and that's where everything really takes place. And then out to the side over here, you have the little sideshows that go on. Those sideshows are interesting. One, for example, in some years past, a guy was standing up and saying, "Come see the horse where his tail is, where his head ought to be." And that was a really attractive thing. People were lined up and put down their quarters and walked in. They had a horse backed up into the stall with his tail where his head ought to be. They passed on through and felt so chagrined and foolish about it that they didn't want to be alone in it, so they never told their friends, but invited them to go see. The little sideshow made lots of money, and everyone went home chagrined. Getting back to the main theme, I get the idea, though, out of that whole show that somehow the church is the big top and the temple is the little sideshow outside. If you can just reverse the picture, you'll get a little more clear picture. We are going to talk tomorrow quite at length about the relationship of the church with the holy order built up in the temple. But the point is this, that Zion is a temple-centered and temple-founded society, and it's only when we move, as it were, from membership in the church and its activities, which are all important, but to really establishing our lives upon the temple and its covenants, and finally getting fullness of priesthood, which is only given in the temple, and then sanctifying our lives and coming to where we can receive the endowment of glory. That is the way to Zion. The way to Zion is not to pack up your trunk and head to Jackson County. The way to Zion is to do this other program. The prophet Joseph Smith put it this way in Teachings, page 308 to 309. He says, "The main object was to build unto the Lord a house whereby he could reveal unto the people the ordinances of his house and the glories of his kingdom, and teach the people the way of salvation. For there are certain ordinances and principles that when they are taught and practiced must be done in a place or house built for that purpose. It was the design of the councils of heaven before the world was that the principles and laws of the priesthood should be predicated upon the gathering of the people in every age of the world. Jesus did everything to gather the people, and they would not be gathered, and he therefore poured out curses upon them. Ordinances instituted in the heavens before the foundation of the world in the priesthood for the salvation of men are not to be altered or changed. All must be saved on the same principles." He says, "It is for the same purpose that God gathers together his people in the last days, to build unto the Lord a house, to prepare them for the ordinances and endowments, washings and anointings, etc. If a man gets a fullness of the priesthood of God, he has to get it the same way that Jesus Christ obtained it, and that was by keeping all the commandments and obeying all the ordinances of the house of the Lord." He says, "All men who become heirs of God and joint heirs with Jesus Christ will have to receive the fullness of the ordinances of his kingdom. And those who will not receive all the ordinances will come short of the fullness of that glory if they do not lose the whole." It is important then that we build temples. It is through temples that we receive the endowments and are taught the principles and received the sacred rites and covenants by which we become a Zion people. Except we become a Zion people, we cannot be exalted. For example, Zion, or the temple, is the basis of the endowment of Zion with glory. Let me turn to section 124 with you, one of the revelations that deals with the temple and its relationship to Zion. Here, beginning with verse 36, the Lord says this, "For it is ordained that in Zion and in her stakes and in Jerusalem those places which I have appointed for refuge shall be the places for your baptisms for your dead. And again, verily I say unto you, how shall your washings be acceptable unto me, except ye perform them in a house which you have built to my name? For this cause I commanded Moses that he should build a tabernacle, that they should bear it with them in the wilderness, and to build a house in the land of promise." Some people think that the temple built in ancient Israel was David's idea, which he was forbidden to carry out, and which his son Solomon finally accomplished. Note what the Lord says. "You need temples," he says, "and for this cause I commanded Moses that he should build a tabernacle, that they should bear it with them in the wilderness." The tabernacle was a portable temple. Then he goes on and says, "And also to build a house in the land of promise, that those ordinances might be revealed which had been hid from before the world was." So the Lord gave Moses instructions to build a temple in ancient Israel, and it wasn't merely David's idea. He picked it up from somewhere back earlier. He goes on and says, "Therefore, verily I say unto you that your anointings and your washings and your baptisms for the dead and your solemn assemblies and your memorials for your sacrifices by the sons of Levi and for your oracles in your most holy places wherein you receive conversations. This is a place of revelation, and you are given the means of revelation. and your statutes and judgments, and no, for the beginning of the revelations and the foundation of Zion, and for the glory, honor, and endowment of all her municipals are ordained by the ordinance of my holy house, which my people are always commanded to build unto my holy name. Now what is the temple for? It's the beginning of the glory, honor, and endowment of all her municipals. What are municipals? They are the buildings and the surrounding things in which we live and administer. The design is that Zion will be glorified, and that glory will not only be in people. The buildings will be glorified, the trees will be glorified, the grass will be glorified, the beauty of the flowers will be glorified. The endowment of glory will rest on Zion and all her municipals and all her environs. The beginning of this is the temple of the Lord. That's where it comes from. That's where it has its basis. We talk about the second coming and the earth being renewed to its paradisiacal glory. It is true that at the opening of the millennium, the great world appearance of Christ, that he comes in glory, and the veil will be taken off, and all flesh will see him, and the wicked will be consumed, and the earth will be purified by the power of that glory and spirit. But it is also true, and this we sometimes don't consider and think about, it's also true that the glory that prevails in the millennium after Christ's coming will be that glory which is built up and manifest through the temples of the Lord that are built up throughout the earth, where the saints are endowed with glory. And the Lord says in section 124, verse 39, it will be through temple ordinances. When the Lord endows his saints with a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, he will do it through the temple and its program. Now that's how important the temple is. So it's important that we see that and we get an orientation on Zion. How does Zion differ from Mount Zion? Zion is established upon her mount, and what is her mount? It's the temple. It's the covenants of the temple. It's the sealing powers. It's fullness of priesthood. It's becoming kings and priests. It's that holy order of the house of the Lord by which and through which we are sanctified. And then the covenants that are the foundation, including the covenant of the consecration, which is one of the sacred covenants of the Melchizedek priesthood. When we have been through the temple and received that, our next step is to go to the bishop and say, I'm ready to consecrate now in actual fact. When we are ready to do that and build a Zion society and really become serious and really get the job done and sanctify our lives as we meet together and counsel each other and teach and talk and minister to each other, and we finally become a sanctified people where the Lord can then place the sealing powers upon his people and then endow them with glory, then we'll be somewhere near ready for the second coming. Then we'll be somewhere near ready. That's the job that we have to do. As we talk about Zion, then, just keep in mind that this is the way we are to come unto God, to be sanctified and partake of Christ's glory. Let me just suggest that you take a look at section 45 for a minute, verse 8 to 15, where the Lord has some important things to say. He says in verse 8, I came unto mine own, and mine own received me not. But as many as received me gave I power to do many miracles and to become the sons of God. Now apply that to me. Do I have power to do many miracles and become the Son of God? If I've come in the right way, I should, not that I'm so great, but that the Lord is in me. It isn't that there are any great big personalities in the church. There are none of us who are great, but there are people who have the gifts of the Spirit. There are people to whom the Lord has given insights in various things, and when we meet together recognizing our dependence upon them, then we share those gifts and we apply ourselves on the principle of true brotherhood, and on that basis we become a Zion people. Now, early in this dispensation, one of the great revelations of modern scripture, beginning with the Book of Mormon, was the fact that the New Jerusalem will be built in America. The old Pilgrim and the Puritan fathers suspected that. I can show you statement after statement among those early brethren where they talked about the building of New Jerusalem in America, and that's an interesting thing. When they came over here, they came here not just to find a new land, they came here to establish a new Jerusalem. One important thing, though, that the Book of Mormon tells us about is that the New Jerusalem will be built in America. Here in Ether 13, Ether, that great prophet of the Jaredite nation, makes some very important disclosures concerning what the Lord had shown him about it. In verse 4, Moroni writes of Ether, saying, Behold, Ether saw the days of Christ, and he spake concerning a new Jerusalem upon this land. And he spake also concerning the house of Israel, and the Jerusalem from whence Lehi should come. After it should be destroyed, it should be built up again, an holy city unto the Lord. Wherefore it could not be a new Jerusalem, for it had been in time of old. But it should be built up again, and become a holy city of the Lord, and it should be built unto the house of Israel. And that a new Jerusalem should be built upon this land, unto the remnant of the seed of Joseph, for which things there has been a type. Then he gives this illustration, whereas Joseph brought his fathers down into the land of Egypt, even so he died there. Wherefore the Lord brought a remnant of the seed of Joseph out of the land of Jerusalem, that he might be merciful unto the seed of Joseph, that they should perish not, even as he was merciful unto the father of Joseph, that he should perish not. Wherefore the remnant of the house of Joseph shall be built upon this land, and it shall be a land of their inheritance. And they shall build up a holy city unto the Lord, like unto the Jerusalem of old, and they shall no more be confounded, until the end come, when the earth shall pass away. Now, when people read the Book of Mormon, they knew that the New Jerusalem would be built here. Then you read in 3 Nephi 20, where the Savior confirms this as he ministers among the Nephites. He says here in 3 Nephi 20, verse 22, And behold, this people will I establish in this land unto the fulfilling of the covenant which I made with your father Jacob, and it shall be a new Jerusalem, and the powers of heaven shall be in the midst of this people, yea, even I will be in the midst of you. See, that's where Christ is among the saints in the New Jerusalem, and this is prior to his coming in glory. So they know that. Knowing that, then, there were a lot of people who had some special interest in it. The question was, if it was going to be built in America, where? Where in America? It was right at this point that this good brother Hyrum Page, whom we've talked about the last hour or so, who had this seer stone that he had found and was looking through it and getting revelations, began to reveal to the saints many things, as he supposed, concerning the New Jerusalem. And he had a ready audience because the Book of Mormon said it was going to be built here. And here now is a prophet who has been raised up, and he's going to tell us all about it. Oliver Cowdery got led astray by it, and the Lord had to straighten things out. Here in section 28, the Lord under these circumstances gives us the first intimation as to where the New Jerusalem will be built. Note what he says in verse 9. And now behold, I say unto you that it is not revealed, and no man knoweth, particularly Hyrum Page, where the city of Zion shall be built, but it shall be given hereafter. Here's the clue. Behold, I say unto you that it shall be on the borders by the Lamanites. What did that term mean to people in that day? What was the western border of the United States? It was the Mississippi River, was it not? And down through there, the Lamanites is the territory westward. So he says, behold, it shall be on the borders by the Lamanites, not over into the Lamanite territory, but right next to the border. With that in mind, then, the prophet Joseph Smith commissioned Oliver Cowdery and Peter Whitmer, Jr., Parley P. Pratt, Richard Ziba Peterson, to go on what we call in church history the Lamanite Mission. They had two purposes. One was to teach the gospel to the Lamanites. The second purpose was to do the spade work for the establishment or the designation of the New Jerusalem. They went forth to do that work. So as a result of their mission, they headed west. They went on up into New York, met some Indian people down there, dropped down into the area of Kirtland, and planted the gospel there. A phenomenal conversion took place. There were several who were baptized, and before they left, it numbered well over 100 and continued on, where it goes into thousands in that and the surrounding areas. Then they went on down a little outpost town called Independence in Jackson County, Missouri. Independence was the outfitting place where you kind of jumped off into Indian territory. If you wanted to go to Santa Fe, you went to Independence and got yourself outfitted. That was also the outfitting place for the fur traders, and it was the point where fur traders converged and sold their wares. It was a little frontier situation, and these brethren went down there. They did the basic work to identify the place. They started teaching the gospel to the Indians until the Indian agent shut them off. Finally, they sent word back to the prophet Joseph Smith, and in the spring of 1831, he and a group of brethren with him went down to Jackson County. And in section 57, which was received on July 20th, 1831, they were told specifically where the center place of Zion should be. Verse 2, "Wherefore, this is the land of promise, and the place for the city of Zion. And thus saith the Lord your God, if you will receive wisdom, here is wisdom. Behold, the place which is now called Independence is the center place. Zion is like unto a tent. It has a center place, and then it has supporting stakes around about. The center place is an administrative hub. There is a high council in Zion, which when it was organized in 1834, the summer of 34, was considered to be a general authority body. And when it is going to be reorganized, when the New Jerusalem is established, or the center place of the New Jerusalem, then it will be another body of brethren with its center in the center place of Zion, with administrative authority in all the stakes of Zion round about, and it will be that kind of program. That is what the Lord designates. He says, and a spot for that temple is lying westward upon a lot, which is not far from the courthouse. Having that designation, then the Lord gave another revelation here in section 58, in which he makes it clear that the redemption of Zion was not to be immediate in his understanding of things. Note how he puts it in verse 3, beginning, "Ye cannot behold with your natural eyes for the present time," and keep in mind that the date now is August 1st, 1831. The prophet never dedicated the land of Zion until August 2nd, and the temple of Zion on August 3rd. So this revelation was given before there was any commitment in regards to the center place or in regard to the temple that was to be built there. Now note what the Lord says, "Ye cannot behold with your natural eyes for the present time the design of your God concerning those things which shall come hereafter, and the glory which shall follow after much tribulation." Now the glory has reference to the cloud by day, the pillar of fire by night. Much tribulation has reference to what? The whole scenario of being run from Jackson County into northern Missouri and out of Missouri westward, and whatever else it will entail, the tribulation that will come to the saints until we finally get a body of Latter-day Saints who are truly prepared to build the New Jerusalem. And after Zion has been cleansed, and the righteous remnant has been brought out by the circumstances of that cleansing, then you'll have a body of people where the Lord's vision here can be fulfilled. He goes on in verse 4 and says, "For after much tribulation come the blessings. Wherefore the day cometh, that ye shall be crowned with much glory. The hour is not yet, but is nigh at hand. Remember this when I tell you before, that you may lay it to heart and receive that which is to follow." The prophet later, after they had been run out of Missouri, refers back to that. He says, "Now the Lord told us about this. Lay this to heart." Then the Lord says, "Remember this, which I tell you before, that you may lay it to heart and receive that which is to follow. Behold, verily I say unto you, for this cause I have sent you." Then he identifies 5 major reasons why he has sent these brethren down. Number 1, that you may be obedient, and that's always a good one. Number 2, that your hearts might be prepared to bear testimony of the things which are to come, both in the sense of glory and in the sense of judgments, which he warned them about. Number 3, that you might be honored in laying the foundation and in bearing record of the land upon which the Zion of God shall stand. He didn't say that you'll be honored in building it. He says you will be honored in laying the foundation and bearing record of the land. Number 4, verse 8, "And also that a feast of fat things might be prepared for the poor, yea, a feast of fat things, of wine on the lees well refined, that the earth may know that the mouths of the prophets shall not fail." Now this feast of fat things is the Zion order and the Zion society. It is symbolic also of the marriage feast of the Lord and his reference to both. He goes on and says, "Yea, a supper of the house of the Lord well prepared, unto which all nations shall be invited. First the rich and the learned, the wise and the noble," and that has reference to the Gentile nations in their time of power and glory. Then he says, "After that cometh the day of my power." As the Lord says in section 90, in the day of the Lord's power, and it's going to be a day of power, and we'll talk about that in the discussion tonight and tomorrow and Saturday evening. He says, "Then shall the poor, the lame, and the blind, and the deaf come in unto the marriage of the Lamb." See, this is the gathering of scattered Israel. Number 5, and that the testimony might go forth from Zion, yea, from the mouth of the city of the heritage of God. So the Lord designated the center place, and he has laid the foundation prophetically of what was going to happen thereafter in the way of judgments and cleansing and preparatory actions. Let's leave it at this point. Let me just say again that in order to establish this program, the way to Zion is the way of the gospel, and it's the way of the temple. It's the way of the Sermon on the Mount. It's the way that leads us to be kings and priests unto God and to rule and reign with him in the eternal house of Israel. When we get that order built up, then we'll have Zion, because that's the end result of that order, to build, and Christ is the King of Zion. He is the Lord and the God of Zion, and Zion is the thing that he thinks to be most precious in his mind, aside from his children. It ranks on par even with the sacredness of his children, because it's only when you get Zion that you get everything else that's worthwhile. That's why Isaiah was so infatuated with Zion. He knew that when Zion was established, Israel would be gathered. He knew that when Zion was established, peace would be established in the earth, and the Lamb would lie down with the lion. He knew that when Zion was established, the Lord would reign. He knew that when Zion was established, the earth would be renewed to its glory and its power. And he knew all these things were conditioned upon Zion, so Zion is the great thing that the Lord loves. He is the God of Zion, and he loves Zion, and it is his desire to build it. May the Lord bless us, my brothers and sisters, that we might grasp a little of that vision and that love in our lives, and do it, and then share with the Lord in that joy that he has and the reward that he has with him for those who build Zion, I pray, in Jesus' name, amen. Questions and answers. Question: is Zion a society of people who have all received sanctification? Answer: yes. Question: what kind of earthly employment would you expect a sanctified person to be engaged in? Answer: the employment of Zion isn't something that is foreign to us. Rather, it is the infusion of God's law and of his truth and his spiritual power into what we do. That includes every profession, including lawyers. It does. It includes every profession. It's the sanctification of every profession. But not only do we have to be sanctified, we have to sanctify our professions. And there's more, as we've hinted here already, that needs to be sanctified more than others. Question: who are the 144,000 who will be with Christ? Will any of them be saints not born of parents in the church? Answer: these people will be men who, and they won't be limited to just this dispensation. There will be those from past dispensations, and there will be those from earlier times in this dispensation, who will be raised up and who will administer this last great program of the gathering of the righteous. This gathering won't be just the converting of them and gathering them to Utah or Arizona or somewhere in Western America. This gathering is to the temple, to the Holy of Holies, to the fullness of the priesthood, to the endowment of glory. It's that gathering, and they perform that work. And then when Christ comes in glory, the only people who are going to be caught up to meet him, the only people caught up to meet him in the clouds of heaven will be the church of the firstborn. He's not going to have a bunch of Gentile saints caught up here. We'd all be burned like bedbugs in a bonfire. I mean, he's going to gather the church of the firstborn. Read section 78, it tells us that. There will be those who abide the day of his coming. The heathen nations will. They won't be burned. The celestial elements, the corrupt elements, they will be consumed. But others will abide the day. But those who will be caught up with him in the clouds will be those who have been sanctified and who have been brought into the church of the firstborn through the ministry of the 144,000. There's a lot more to it than that. I may get to it if we have a little time later. Question: will there be more than one who will lead the 144,000, such as Christ himself, or will he commission one in mortal form to play a part in the building? Answer: if you understood the book of Revelation, you'll understand that John the Revelator will have a role in this. So also will the 4 great gospel angels who have restored the gospel in earlier times. I refer to Peter, Moses, Elias, and Elijah. They will have a role to play in this work, but also there will be a living prophet on earth. The divine beings and eternal beings will communicate and carry out work through the living prophet. Question: are the 144,000 couples or priesthood holders only? Answer: the answer is yes. They have to have fullness of priesthood, and each of them will have a beautiful wife who will play a part in that. I want you sisters to know that. We get the idea that the only way you can hold the priesthood is to hold your hubby. I counsel you to do that, but anyone who has been to the temple knows that women administer in priesthood ordinances. In the church, you do not, but in the temple and in Zion order, women do hold and administer priesthood rights in connection, as Joseph Smith put the term, in connection with their husbands. That's true of the 144,000. Question: is 144,000 an absolute figure, or is it figurative? If absolute, why continue to enlarge the church? Answer: well, I want to get in there, first of all. I don't know whether it's absolute. All we have is a general statement on it. But if you read Revelation chapter 7, you have the 144,000, and with them a huge multitude that no man can number. So these are the brethren who hold the keys to develop the program, and there are others who receive the benefits and powers related to that program and are a part of it. So yes, you can enlarge the church, although you may not be a member of the 144,000 per se. Question: if these pure men are called to be of the 144,000 and are married, wouldn't their wives also have that calling with them? Answer: the answer is yes, in a sense. Now, don't see, again, we're dealing with the temple, and do righteous women administer ordinances in relation to the temple? If you know the answer to that, you know the answer to what he's talking about here. Question: and if so, does the 144,000 include the wives, or is the 144,000 just priesthood? Answer: the 144,000 are priesthood holders, but there is a marriage relationship there. Their wives are an addition to that number. If you are just talking about bodies, yes, there are more than 144,000 bodies. Question: are there presently persons or groups who have consecrated their belongings to the church and are living as Zion people? Answer: in a formal sense, that the law of consecration is applied, the answer is no, not that I know of. You might have some of the general authorities who give full time and that kind of thing, and you might consider them as being pretty close to it, but not in the sense of implementing the law as we know it. Question: will Zion be established prior to the Holocaust, or will the people who are protected under the cloud of glory go to establish Zion following the Holocaust? Answer: Zion will be cleansed and purified during the Holocaust, and there will be those of the saints who will perish physically, but then those who remain and abide and endure this will be the righteous element. Question: during the millennium, will the land be level or flat, with the absence of mountains? Answer: the answer is no. The mountains will be leveled and the valleys will be exalted. The Lord wasn't born in Kansas. He is a mountain man. He is. And he's not going to put everything down to table level, believe me. Yes, there will be mountains that will be leveled, and there will be valleys that will be exalted. You just kind of turn things around, but you are going to have some beautiful scenery in the millennium. Question: during the millennium, as resurrected beings, will we spend the 1,000 years doing the temple work for the living and the dead? Answer: no resurrected being will minister in the temple. You have to have living people in mortality to do that. Question: will we raise the children who die as youngsters? Answer: yes. Women who lose their children, if they are worthy, will have those children resurrected to the same stature of the physical being they were when they were laid in the grave, and they will have the privilege and opportunity of raising those children in the millennial society. Question: do we need to live the law of consecration in its fullness before Christ comes? Answer: the answer is yes. Question: will the Lamanites and or Nephites, whose land this land is, their inheritance, lead the building of New Jerusalem? How does Ephraim be involved in that great work? Answer: the answer to that is that the Lord has given this land not merely to the Lamanites and the Indian people. He brought the pilgrims here. He brought the Puritans here. He established the great constitution of this land. He gave it to their fathers as much as he gave it to any of those people. The fact is that their fathers apostatized from the program. Therefore, they rejected the initial offer of the gift to them, and while they are still here in bodies, the Lord has given the land to others. These others are richly impregnated physically with the blood of Israel, and they have just as much right to this choice land by blood as any of the children of Lehi. In fact, there are many among them who have much more right by blood than do the seed of Lehi. So when, if you read the Lord's appointments, the land in and around the New Jerusalem is given to the saints, it's given to Ephraim. The Indian people as a people will not inherit that land. Instead, they will receive their endowments, their blessings, their gospel, and they'll go back to their own lands and will build up Zion in their midst. Some of them may live, yes, in and around the center place of Zion. The idea that the Indian people are going to build the New Jerusalem is a misinterpretation of 3 Nephi 21. The Lord says there that the converted Gentiles, and he's talking of Gentiles who are Gentiles purely by blood, will assist two groups, the remnant of Jacob, the Indian people, and the others of the house of Israel. If you read section 133, you'll find that the Lord talks about the redemption of Zion and the blessings that come from it, and he says this, the 10 tribes will come to Zion, and there shall they fall down and be crowned with glory. They're not going to be converted to the gospel at that time. They've already got that. They are going to be crowned with glory, receive those ultimate and final ordinances. He says, even in Zion, by the hands of the servants of the Lord, even the children of Ephraim. Ephraim is going to give them those endowments of glory after we've gotten on the stick and gotten them ourselves. Then he says, and they shall be filled with songs of everlasting joy. Behold, this is the blessing of the everlasting God upon the tribes of Israel, and the richer blessing upon the head of Ephraim and his fellows. Now, why the richer blessing? Not because of favoritism, but because Ephraim has borne the heat of the day. It was Ephraim that went through the refiner's fire. It was Ephraim, the group at last, the righteous remnant, that came out of that refiner's fire and had the endowment of the Spirit, the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night, and they went and established the New Jerusalem. In the meantime, at that time there will be great conversion of the Indian people, and they will participate, and properly understood, the statement in 3 Nephi 21 means that the converted Gentiles, who are pure Gentiles in blood, will assist Lamanites, who will assist those who hold the keys, namely Ephraim. And the idea that we're going to give the New Jerusalem program to the Indian people, and they are going to do it, is simply a rank misconception of the greatest order. And we see that expressed in a distortion of it so many times, but it simply is not true. There is nothing to bear that out. Question: what is meant by the name of the Father written in their foreheads in connection with the 144,000? Answer: in the teachings, page 321, the prophet Joseph Smith deals with that, and he says this: 4 destroying angels holding power over the 4 quarters of the earth until the servants of God are sealed in their foreheads, which signifies, and here's what it means, sealing the blessing upon their heads. And that is the temple blessings, including fullness of priesthood and the sealing powers, meaning the everlasting covenant, thereby making their calling and election sure. So that term has to do with sealing the powers, the attributes, the authority of the Father in their foreheads through the sacred sealing ordinances of the temple. Question: in the temple, when we make covenants, haven't we made covenants that are part of the covenants of the church of the firstborn? Answer: the answer is yes. The temple is there to build up. Read the teachings, page 237 on that one if you have it. Question: please clarify Moses 7:16 in relation to Ether 3:15. Answer: well, let's get to Moses 7:16. And from that time forth there were wars and bloodshed among them, but the Lord came and dwelt with his people, and they dwelt in righteousness. With Ether 3:15. And never have I showed myself unto man whom I have created, for never has man believed in me as thou hast. This is the Lord to the brother of Jared, and that's the chapter that concerns it. I see the idea. I think what he's getting to is, if the Lord dwelt among them, then how can he say to Ether, who lived later, that never have I shown myself unto man, for never has man believed in me as thou hast? That's always been a problem passage, but it doesn't say it doesn't have an answer, because it does. Let me just put it this way. The brother of Jared experience, see, Christ manifests himself both as the Father and as the Son, and at times jointly both in a dual capacity. When he manifested himself unto Enoch, he manifested himself as in the office, power, and capacity of the Father. The first time, then he revealed himself to be the Son. The first time that he manifested himself in the office, power, and capacity of the Son, and then revealed himself that he was also the Father, was with the brother of Jared. When he says, "Never have I, the Son, shown myself unto man whom I have created, for never has man believed in me as thou hast." The brother of Jared not only wanted to see him, but he saw his finger, and he saw a finger that he thought was flesh. What he saw was a visual portrayal of the finger of Christ as though he were living in the flesh. So he explains, "Behold, this body which ye now behold is the body of my spirit. And man have I created after the body of my spirit. And even as I appear unto thee to be in the spirit, will I appear unto my people in the flesh." Then Moroni says, "And now as I, Moroni, said, I could not make a full account of these things which are written. Therefore it sufficeth me to say that Jesus showed himself unto this man in the spirit. And now know, even after the manner and in the likeness of the same body, even as he showed himself unto the Nephites." It wasn't just that he saw him as spirit, he saw him as he would appear among the Nephites. This then was his role as the Son. Then that being who made that disclosure of himself, not just as a spirit personage, but as he would be on earth, and as he would manifest himself in the resurrection to the Nephites, that being who portrayed to the brother of Jared that vision of those things, then revealed that he was also the Father. This is the first time that that kind of revelation had been given. Not that he had never appeared to man before, because the Lord appeared to Adam in the valley of Adam-on-Diamon. Question: did Father Adam have temples? Answer: the answer is yes. Question: recently I heard a rumor that in Salt Lake City or Provo that a sermon said all 144,000 will be chosen from Ephraim and not from any other tribe. Answer: well, that's contrary to Scripture. Revelation 7 makes it clear that they are chosen from all the tribes of Israel. Question: if one will not take up a sword against his neighbor but must flee to Zion, is it a single place or still the pure in heart wherever they are? Answer: read Teachings page 160 where the prophet talks about that. He says this: "There will be here and there a stake of Zion for the gathering of the saints. Some may have cried peace, but the saints in the world will have little peace from henceforth. Let this not hinder us from going to the stakes. There your children shall be blessed, and you in the midst of friends where you may be blessed." Let me just put it this way. The New Jerusalem isn't just a city in Jackson County. That's the center place of the New Jerusalem. That's the city of Zion. The New Jerusalem is a complex of cities of 15,000 to 20,000 each in size, beginning with the Appalachian Mountains in the east and extending to the Pacific in the west, with no north or south boundary. That's how Joseph Smith was given to understand it in a revelation he received in the fall of 1830, which unfortunately was lost. But we have some references to it from some of the correspondence of the day. So the New Jerusalem is a complex of cities. When you talk about building the New Jerusalem, you're not just talking about building a particular place. Question: comment more about opens up the onslaught of adversary against the individual. Answer: well, I don't know that anything more really needs to be said on that. It's like Brigham Young said, and this is the Journal of Discourses, Volume 3, page 205, if you have a set at home. Does the Lord allow the adversary greater onslaught on the saints by their having revelations than by their not having revelations? Yes, he does. One illustration of it will be, as you read the power of the adversary in the book of Revelation, when he calls down fire from heaven and all of that, that will be after Zion is endowed with glory, and the adversary will be permitted commensurate power in opposition to that. It's the kind of opposition that will centralize finally in the last great battle of Gog and Magog. There are two battles of Gog and Magog, one before the millennium and one after. But the last great battle after the millennial period, when you really have a power situation, the adversary will have the right by the principle of opposition, if I can put it that way, to manifest a commensurate power against the righteous to that which they have received and been endowed with during the millennial period. It's going to be a real blast, that one is really. Well, that runs out of it, except for maybe one or two that might not be appropriate to answer. We'll see you at 7 o'clock. Thank you very much. I appreciate your endurance to the end. We'll see you then.